All right, Tony, good to see you again, brother. How you doing?
I'm great, man. It's always good to be on the
Yeah.
channel here, learning, talking about plumbing and electrical.
Yeah, it's so cool to see the response of all the questions you've been answering. So many people are liking it, engaging with it. So I appreciate you taking the time helping consumers understand how plumbing works. So good job with that.
Yeah, it's a crazy field, believe it or not. A lot of people try to do it themselves, but I saw something that was very interesting the other day. I read a magazine article and it was talking about how, with the trades, how important the math skills from high school are so important for tradespeople, and that you really need to be good in math to be good at the trade that you're doing. And in plumbing, let me tell you, people don't give plumbers the credit they deserve with all the math skills that are involved. Everything from the degree of what the pipe needs to be pitched at so that you don't have flow too quick, or that you don't have enough flow for solids to go down into the sewer or septic tank. Volumes and gas, actually, and as well as the liquids themselves. You can get into air with plumbing. So it's pretty cool. And it was really interesting to read about how much math is needed in this plumbing field. And there's a lot that's needed to do it
Wow.
correctly, right? So it's not a do it yourself type trade. Definitely, like, a lot of people want to do it themselves. And there are certain things, and I'm sure you and I will get into those a little later, that they should do themselves that are quite easy to do. But there's some stuff that, yeah, you need to have a professional, just like you would in the electrical business.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, like when you think about all those things you talk about, if you get one thing wrong, you create a backage to your house, right? Nasty stuff going
Yeah.
in there. Things won't last long. You didn't look at what trees are around, so then it can create other problems with the roots. I mean, all systems that again that we're going to talk about. But you're right. I wouldn't have thought about that. But now, do you need like calculus kind of math, or is it like add, subtraction, division, maybe
Yeah,
some
it's more of
geometry?
your simple basic maths. It is. It is. I mean, there's formulas out there, but they're readily accessible, right? Like, if you've got to figure out cubic feet and things like that, and volumes, right? There are guides that'll help you out there, especially when you're talking about gas, or where you're talking about volumes of liquid. How do we make sure we have enough venting, things like that, in a plumbing system? And look, venting is one of the most important things for a good sewer system in your home. You've got to have good venting, and you got to know how to vent. Do you have enough vents? Is it a stack vent? Is it a smaller vent that may be, by a sink or something that you have to add because your plumbing, your solids aren't moving correctly, or you hear a lot of glugs or gurgling in your drains? Then that's a sign that you're not properly vented and the system wasn't put in correctly. And you're going to have issues if you have that. You also can get some water hammering. There's all kinds of different problems. And look, and when you're laying out plumbing for a new residence or a new building, I mean, just making sure that you're cutting the pipes correctly for them to fit into the coupling, so that, like, let's say you have an elbow or something like that. I mean, your measurements have to be spot on so that the plumbing is lined up correctly, depending on where you may have piers or studs or what have you in the home, to make sure that, all of that is laid out correctly.
Wow, yeah, that
Wow.
seems like a lot, and you don't want to do the wrong angle, the wrong whatever, because it's just going to create more mess. So, like to your point, it's like a lot of this stuff people need a professional plumber to do. Sure, some things you can do yourself, but don't want to mess with plumbing. There's a reason why there's a serious certification to get a license. And
Sure.
there's things that you have to do in order to be a master plumber, because it's you're dealing with gas. It's not only gas, but you're dealing with waste, and waste can get very toxic very fast,
Yeah.
and people can get sick from that. So yeah, definitely don't want to do a lot of stuff to yourself. You want to hire a professional plumber. So let's get into the questions here today. Let's see how many we can get done today. The first question, it's about emergency problems, right? So the first question is, why does my toilet keep overflowing even after I plunge it?
Great question. So, more than likely, the reason your toilet's overflowing when you're plunging it is something more than likely is wedged, right? Like, so more than likely you've got an issue with maybe a toy or something more solid. It may be holding wipes, it may be holding toilet paper, it may be holding more solids that is not allowing the plunger to really do the job that it's doing. So you still have that backup going on while you're trying to plunge the toilet. So that's when you may need to either pull the toilet because it could be wedged inside of the toilet, or it could be down below the toilet into the stack going up to the toilet. That you may need to get a professional out there to come and take a look at it, because something hard, something solid is really backing that line up, and it's catching a lot of what's making the clog. Okay. And just because, and that's a great point. So if you're doing the plunging and you're still getting it, and let's say that you do finally get it to break free, but you still notice that something just doesn't seem right with the flush, maybe you cleared the softer tissues, but you still have that object wedged in there. More than likely, it's a toy or something that somebody put down there hard. It's not going to dissolve. Like eventually toilet paper will dissolve. Wipes, they really don't dissolve well. We talked about this before. I mean, there really are no flushable wipes. Those are a plumber's best friend for clogs, because they're going to get us called out time after time.
So, what's the worst thing you pulled out of the toilet, other than obviously waste?
Yeah, not to get too gross on anything, we've pulled out some real nasty stuff, and I'll leave it at that. But hard wise, definitely just toys, dinosaurs, and action figures and things like that.
Did the homeowner keep it, or did they throw it away?
The kid wants to see the toy go swirling around, and whoop, it's gone. But it just hit the next elbow down. So yeah, that's primarily what you're going to find. Primarily what you're going to find.
So be careful what toy you buy on eBay, because you don't know.
Just teach your kids. It can save you some money. Nothing goes down the toilet but two things, and that's waste.
Yeah, right on. Awesome. That's great. So next question here. Should I shut off my water if I have a leak, and where is the main shut-off valve?
So a leak, I would say you definitely want to turn your water off if you have a leak to anywhere inside your home that you're, number one, that's a fast moving leak, right? So that this is not something that we could put a trash can underneath and hold until we get a professional out and just keep monitoring it and dumping it out. But if you have a leak, I would definitely say, yeah, cut your water off, right? And more than likely, you're not going to be able to isolate where the cutoff is unless you have a cutoff at a toilet, and maybe the leak's coming from the supply lines there, supply lines under a sink, supply lines into a washing machine or something like that. Then definitely you want to find the cutoff near that particular item or appliance. Typically, most, especially in our areas that we do plumbing work, most of those main cutoffs are typically located by the road. That's where your water meter is. You'll need a key. It doesn't mean you have to have a key. A key just makes it a lot easier to turn the valve. And water keys typically look like a T handle, right? And they have a piece at the bottom of them that basically looks like some type of a C, and it can be very angled. And you put that on top of the valve, and you would turn the top of the handle to turn that off. I've seen it done with pliers before. Also crescent wrenches and adjustable wrenches as well. But it makes it easier to have a water key. You can pick those up at your local hardware stores. Typically, all of our technicians carry water keys. And we also train them to always know where a home's cutoff is before we're doing any water work in their home, just in case something does leak. We want to be able to access that very quickly, just because the volume of water that comes out is amazing on certain leaks. So we want to know where that's at. And I've always encouraged homeowners, especially around the winter, know where that cutoff is. And again, sometimes grass will grow over those covers. So you need to always be aware of where that is. If you call Benjamin Franklin Plumbing out, ask our guys to help you with that. Ask them to help locate where that is, where and how you would turn it off in the case of an emergency. Very important stuff. All homeowners should know where to cut their water off, their main supply.
That's good. I know I heard a story from a HVAC contractor that said that someone called them because there was a leak coming from their ceiling and it was like a one-story house. And so is that leak more, I think they call a plumber, like is there any water piping that goes above your ceiling that maybe that goes to the roof, or is that more of the HVAC plumbing system? So you guys don't really deal with that. It's more leaks there on the floor, maybe in the walls. Like what type of leaks do you guys normally have to deal with?
So, look, it is possible for water lines to be in an attic, even on a single story home. Now, if it's a slab home, especially, there definitely could be water lines running in your attic because they may have had a slab leak at some point in time and had all their plumbing run up above into the attic and drop down versus, trying. I mean, the only way I'm aware of replumbing a house from underneath would be to tunnel underneath the house, and it's not a very wide used practice on a slab home. If you've got a crawl space, more than likely, it's always going to be HVAC, and those are drain lines for your air handler, typically up in your attic. If something's clogged up and there's nowhere for that water to drain back out of the house, we still get calls for that. We're completely able to come out and clear those lines. Because what happens is sludge and old, bacteria and mold and that kind of stuff will get caught up in that drain line and prevent it from draining. And an HVAC unit typically in an attic's got a lot of condensation running off of it, so it's going to drain out of that pan. If it can't use the existing drain, it's just going to come over the sides of it, and that's very common, especially when it's real hot and those things are really condensing.
Right on. Well, thank you. That's good.
Yeah.
So why is my water brown, yellow, or rusty?
Yeah. So look, if you've got discoloration in your water, a lot of times that's a water quality issue. And in plumbing, we will tell a lot of our clients a lot of your issues are a derivative of having bad water quality, right? And so when you see that discoloration of what you just asked, whether it was brown, yellow, or rusty, right? Those are telltale signs that we've got some issues, right? So usually brown water could be caused by chemicals in your water. And I'll say chemicals, I mean minerals like maybe manganese causing a dark discoloration. And if you're getting a rusty color, very well could be iron in your water, right? And usually these are going to be more not municipal water systems, they're going to be well water systems, okay? But it could happen also with municipal water. You could have a heavy iron concentrate in your water, but typically we'll never see that in our area. I've never known for us to have a lot of iron in our municipal waters in the areas that we serve, but it could be a cause of that, right? Yellow water, you may have something leaching into the system somewhere, especially with municipal water. If you've got discolored water and you're on a well, then you definitely need to have a plumbing company come out that does water filtration, that's knowledgeable on water filtration, and let them clean that up for you. Definitely don't want that in your body. It's a heavy mineral, whatever it is. If it's a discolor in the water, your body is flushing that item, whatever it may be, through it, and you're becoming the filter, which is not healthy. We want to make sure that everybody's water is healthy. You want a knowledgeable company that's very knowledgeable on how to filter your water for the health and for the safety factors for sure.
Yeah, it's cool how like a lot of people realize plumbers are just there to unclog stuff and fix toilets, right? But you guys, because of your expertise, you can actually help people have a better quality of life with the kind of water that they get to drink, the kind of water that gets to shower with, right? So your water filtration systems are really great. And so don't just think of the plumber just fixing your piping, but can actually
Right.
help you potentially with a good filtration system that the quality of life, your hair, your skin, all those things, and obviously your organs and stuff like that, just from getting a nice purification product. And so I love that you talked about that because people don't realize that plumbers are in the health business too.
Oh yeah, well, look, I mean, we sanitize. If you've got, like, thankfully we live in the United States of America and we have sanitary water and sewer systems. Plumbers really are the heroes. They don't wear a cape, but I mean, they keep our country and our towns and our homes sanitary. And that's a real big deal, especially if you've ever had the ability to travel to other parts of the world, and you really appreciate the fact that we've got sanitary sewer and water systems. A lot of places in the world just don't have that, and that's why a lot of people get real sick when they go to those countries. But you know, learning about water quality, right, and how to treat water quality, and we're real big on training our guys about that, not just looking for chlorine in the water, like what other issues or contaminants or items that can be found in the water that are detrimental to our health, right? We always talk about healthy water, and water can help you with your health issues for sure. But if you've got issues with any of your plumbing fixtures and it's continual, it's a bad water quality issue, and it's things that we can treat. So if it's doing that, the metal inside of your home, I mean, look, I don't want my body to be filtering heavy metals and issues that are growing scale on your shower heads or in your aerators on your sinks and stuff. We want to clean all that out. You may be getting help, safe water because it's got chlorine and it can't grow, bacteria from that. But at the end of the day, what else is in there that your body's filtering? So it's real important to make sure that, we talked about discoloration of water. But there's other telltale signs of water that may have some issues that you need to have addressed for sure. And our plumbers, we train on water quality a lot because we don't want to just treat the symptom, right? We want to treat the problem. And if we treat the problem, it'll take care of the symptoms. Just like you
Yeah.
would want a doctor to do, quit giving me that extra pill, doc. I want to make sure that I'm getting rid of the problem so I don't have to have the pill, which in this case would be a new faucet or a new shower head or a new water heater. Now you're getting into some big expenses. So very important to have good water quality.
I was you say that I was just in Ireland last month with my wife and one of my daughters, and we often say we live better than kings in this day and age, because back then we went to this old castle,
Oh, wow.
and they took us to like where they went to the restroom, and it's like, oh, like it's this like offshoot thing with like metal, whatever, and I'm sure they just like, and it just went down to the ground, and that was the
Yeah,
bathroom, and
right.
whoever had to go clean that right there, four, and then go to the bathroom.
Right.
So
Yeah.
we live better, and the smell in that room, you can't imagine. So we live better than kings because of plumbers being able to create a better environment. And another story I want to share with you, I'm going to share my screen. I think this is awesome that people don't realize. This is when we went to Greece. You'll get a kick out of this. We went to Greece. I forgot 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago. And this is, I want to say 600 years BC, or maybe in 10,000 years BC. And this is
Wow.
a place in Santorini where they were building, and they discovered this land underneath the ground. So they started digging deep. And check this out. Like, this is plumbing piping that they had within their city that actually worked. Historians said that if someone were to come in this facility and dig it all out and actually start using this the way they did then, the piping will still work. The water and the waste will still work. You can see the piping right here.
Yeah.
And so this is all a old city that they dug up. And so, bro, they were plumbers even back 600, 700 AD. I mean,
That is
BC.
crazy. That is
Some of
so
the
neat.
some of the oldest civilization even took plumbing to consideration of like what, that's
Ooh.
human waste is very important to take care of, and we just take it for granted because we have obviously right now technology that makes it simple. But they were thinking like you would die if you didn't take care of a human waste problem, right? So
Right.
this is
Well, that's right.
so it's cool that they had plumbers, 10,000 BC and piping
Yeah.
that still works. You're talking like thousands and thousands of years later.
Yeah, well, and think about the Roman aqueducts and stuff. They got it. That I tell you, I wouldn't want to sat on that toilet seat right there. You might have some splinters if you weren't careful. You definitely wouldn't want to move. But yeah, that's crazy, man. I've
Yeah.
never seen that before.
Oh yeah,
You
it's
know,
amazing. Yeah,
that
amazing.
is that
Yep.
really is.
So
Wow.
you guys are probably one of the oldest profession that's ever lived. So the blue
Yeah, I mean,
collar
looking at
workers were
that.
back then. Oh man.
Banging little rock. I mean, who cut out the pieces in between those rocks to make that little short piece of pipe? Can you imagine the labor it took to make 100-foot run?
Oh my gosh. Well, they had
And
all the
they had to
time in the
have
world, right?
look, they had to have the right pitch on, the right angle on the pipes then too.
Yeah.
Especially then because they had all those couplings, like it looked like about every 6 to 8 inches, man. You talk about being exact, right? They had to,
Yeah.
yeah. And
Yeah.
back then, did you just plumb my house? I did, and it's backing up. Kill that fella. He didn't know what the heck he was doing.
Yeah. You're right.
Don't worry
100%.
about the paycheck,
Yeah.
But look, think about that too, Daniel. Like outhouses. Like I when I was a kid, I can remember a few outhouses around our area. Man, look here. Those things were scary to even go in because you were worried about a snake or something. And
Yeah.
man, you talk about a smell. If it was an active outhouse, whoo, pretty bad,
Oh
pretty
yeah.
bad.
So thank God for plumbers.
Amen.
All right. Next question. What should I do if a pipe freezes?
Well, I would say if you have a pipe freeze, then you need to evaluate it, right? If it's depending on where it is and what it's doing. Okay, so sometimes people have pipe that freezes and they never know that it froze because maybe they were sleeping and by the time they woke up, it had warmed up just enough for it to thaw and continue to roll. But usually, when we have pipe freezes, especially in our area, we recommend definitely turning your water off because once it does thaw out, that's when you can have some real bad leaks and it really create a lot of damage. So, I mean, your go-to, if you have frozen pipes, more than likely go turn your water off. If you can isolate where the pipe is frozen and just turn that section off, by all means do that because if you have older water lines, right? So even with PEX, I would still recommend it. Turn your water off until you know it's thawed out. Turn your water back on very slowly and then check for any signs of leaks or any signs of a blowout from it, maybe a pipe splitting or something like that. Even with PEX. So PEX, everybody loves PEX because PEX does have the ability to freeze without splitting a line, but there still could be issues with PEX piping from freezing, right? So it's not a get out of jail card free just because you have PEX. If you get a frozen line and maybe it's around one of their, what I'll call a crimp ring going to maybe an elbow or to some other type of an appliance piece or what have you, I mean, you still need to just verify that that's not going to leak. So I recommend always be safe. Be better to be safe than sorry. An ounce of prevention by cutting your water supply off is worth a pound of cure, right? Don't have the big accident from not doing something so simple.
Right on. So, what are some preventatives that we know it's going to freeze, right? We've checked the weather. What are some preventative actions that we can do so that our pipes don't freeze?
Yeah, hey, great question, right? We talk about this around times that it's going to freeze. We try to even put out little things on social media advising our clients, look, so there's a few things you can always do to get ready, right? So they make spigot covers, outdoor spigot covers. You can usually buy at a local hardware store. Some people will wrap them up in plastic bags and tape them all up. That's insulation, okay? You can insulate them. You can use plastic bags, believe it or not, because they hold in heat, but use a lot of them. But yeah, definitely cover any outdoor spigots or faucets. Another thing to do is to leave your water running at a slow drip, right? A drip a second. But remember to cut those drips off. A drip a second is somewhere around 3,000 gallons. Okay, that's a lot. And so, over the course of, say, a month, right? But if you have an isolated bathroom that nobody goes to and you leave it dripping, that's a lot of water. So I always tell our clients, look, go to the farthest place from the house, turn your cold water and drip your cold water, right? If you have an outdoor tankless water heater, which we have a lot of those in the South, it is okay to drip your hot line faucet drip, right? Because it takes so many gallons per minute for that outside water heater to turn on. So you're not going to burn through your gas. I don't recommend that on an actual hot line on your water heater if it's inside for sure, because you're going to drain your water heater out and create a huge electricity bill. But you want to make sure that your cold water is dripping. I always say go to your farthest faucet or a tub and just have it a steady, slow drip. And you should be fine. You should be fine. If we get a real cold day, it still may freeze. It's possible, right? But those are good preventative measures. And always insulate any pipe outside. Okay. And that's hard because a lot of times people will see black, like you'll see that black tubed insulation. Believe it or not, the R value, which is the insulation value on that, is an R1, which is the absolute lowest insulation value you can have. So don't think that all of that is insulated and it's going to prevent a freeze happening in that line. Now, keep this in mind. If we have a wind, like let's say you have a mobile home or you have a crawl space, and for whatever reason you can get a draft going through there, maybe some wind cutting through there, right? So when it's windy and cold, it reduces the temperature, just like a fan inside of a house during hot weather, right? It makes it feel better. It gives you the appearance that it's actually cooler. So that's why I say, like, you still want to insulate everything that you can, but sometimes, that insulation is just not enough. So you want moving water. Moving water takes a little longer to freeze.
So are you saying every bathroom needs a drip or just the one bathroom the
No,
furthest
you
away?
just want it moving, right? If you go to the farthest point, it's moving from the source all the way through the lines up to the farthest source. And you may want to drip two if you've got two that are on extreme ends or two sides or what have you. I wouldn't drip all my faucets, no.
Okay. Another
Another good
idea.
tip, one last good tip too, Daniel, is let's open up our cabinet doors underneath sinks that may be on an exterior wall, right? That allows hot, warm air to get in by that wall, which may contain that pipe.
Oh, so I was about to ask you, hey, is that a good idea to open up? So
Yeah,
you answered it.
yeah.
There you go. Awesome. That's good tips there. All right. Let's move into like sewer and drain issues. Okay. So what are signs my sewer line is clogged or broken?
Yeah, great. Another good question. So if it's clogged, typically you're going to know because you're not going to get much movement, right? So when you flush the toilet or you try to drain your tub, if you've taken a shower and it's backing up, okay, we got something in there. And it may not even be a full clog, right? We may just have a really backed up drain for some reason. Number one cause of that's hair or grease. Very simple fix there. But if you've got a broken, let's say you don't know, you've got a crawl space and everything seems to be draining fine, no problem. Okay. Do you notice any smells? Because the smell will still permeate up through a wooden floor base. Or do you notice you may not be able to notice, but do you have flies? Do you have a lot of flies all of a sudden, right? That could be another telltale sign of a broken coupling or something underneath the house that needs to be addressed. What we have found, a lot of people have no idea when they have a cracked pipe underneath for a sewer leak or their sewer's just dumping underneath their house. They don't know that until somebody goes under their house, right? And so we always encourage our guys to go through to get into the crawl space, right? I mean, it's very important for us to do visual checks of that. If we see that, hopefully it hasn't been a bad leak. Sometimes we've had to have other companies come out and remove the waste from the dirt because it's that bad. and they put maybe a lot of lie down, things like that to help make it safe for our guys to go actually do the repair work. So if you have a crawl space, it's harder to tell that you've got broken piping. But I always encourage a service guy to go take a look under the house. We're going to tell our guys to do that regardless, but most people do not make it a habit to go into their crawl space and take a visual check. But that's not a bad idea to do on one time a year. It's a great idea actually to go poke your head underneath your house, look at your systems, make sure everything's good because things happen, right? Strapping may break, pipe may settle or something to that effect and create an issue with where pipes meet, and create a leak because they're not lined up as well as they were when they were first put in. Maybe your house settled or something to that degree. So you definitely want to take a look and have the service guy take a look. It's just a small inspection. We do them free. We're happy to do them to come take a look and make sure everything looks good under a house.
Right on. How do tree roots get into sewer pipes?
Yeah. So look, it's springtime. It's summertime. What are trees searching for? They're searching for a water source. And what better water source with all the nutrients of waste in it, right? Like that's the original fertilizer. Okay. And so tree roots are always, I mean, those are some pesky things. They can get in the smallest of cracks because they are just persistent. They don't stop. And so usually they intrude into your sewer lines through those small cracks. Maybe it's through an actual true crack in the pipe, right? Things shift outside. Tree roots push. They can push and create pressure on a PVC pipe. Cast iron actually rots or erodes from the inside out. Okay. So, when that old cast iron lines get real weak and they get a little spongy, and, a tree root will definitely take charge of that and definitely enter and penetrate into that line and create a block. And then you've got to get somebody out there with a tree. We can cut their tree roots. And then we always recommend putting in a root retardant, something like Root X, and we pour that in, and that gives you some time. It may give you a year's fix, right? But you definitely want to have a spot repair, or it may just be time to replace the entire sewer line at that point in time, especially if it's old. If you think about it, like when's the last time they really thought that putting in galvanized pipe for your sewer lines was a good time, right? So I'm going to say even into the 80s that you're seeing PVC pipe for your waste lines, right? So before that, okay, galvanized. How old is that galvanized pipe with waste running through it? You're going to, like I said, remember if you start off with this size pipe, just say a 3 or 4 inch waste line, over time it just keeps growing into itself and it's going to eventually just pinch. But tree roots, they'll wave themselves through all those layers of that metal, get in the way and create havoc for your waste, for you to have backups all the time. Tree roots grow very fast, especially, springtime, winter, not wintertime, but springtime and summer. They're looking for that water source because it's so warm outside. Not that it can't happen in the winter, but you're going to see a lot of that happen in spring and summer for sure.
So should homeowners just obviously be cognizant of where their piping is so that they know where to plant these trees, or does it matter?
No, I mean, look, I would definitely say don't plant it right on top of your sewer lines because eventually, I mean, even PVC. Not that PVC goes bad, but again, like you're exerting a lot of force. Trees exert a lot of force. They move concrete, they move houses, they move sidewalks, right? So you're talking about something that is put together and it's held by a chemical glue or what have you. And with something, maybe it's pushing one way or the other. It could be pushing two different ways, depending on how the roots are growing around. And as soon as it sees that entrance, it's going to jump in it. So I would say if you know where your sewer line is, you don't want to be having, plantings over that, and definitely don't plant a tree over that because if you have an issue, unless you're going to use a trenchless system to replace that, which can be very costly, but they are available. You're going to lose that shrubbery. You're going to lose that beautiful tree that's been doing so well from without you knowing that you've been fertilizing it the whole time as well, right? So yeah, it's not a good idea to plant anything over any type of utility just because it's man-made, and more than likely it's going to fail at some point in time.
Okay, you know what? Let's do one more.
Okay.
How often should I have my drains professionally cleaned?
We that's a great question again, because here's why, right? So let's say you've got a fairly new home and you notice that things are backing up just a little bit more than you like, right? What did we mention earlier, right? Two things that wreak havoc with the drain lines are your grease and hair and soaps. Soaps get caught up in that hair, right? Well, hair is a protein that does not go away very easily. So a lot of times you can do a lot of that DIY yourself, right? You can pull your drain plug up, get a pair of needle nose, and pull all that nasty hair out, put it in a bag, and throw it away. Do that monthly. Like speaking of my family situation, right? I have two ladies with long hair, my daughter being one, and my wife being the other. I bet I clean our pop-up drains in the sink as well as in any tubs. I clean them once a month because they have real long hair. They do brush their hair before they get into the shower, but they still lose some hair and it just gets caught up at the top part of the drain. So, should you have them professionally cleaned annually? I would tell you to definitely check your pop ups, right? They also make a product out there that treats drains, right, and moves the liquid like your solids, okay? So, any fats, oils, greases, and it's safe, it's biologically safe. We sell a product called BioBin, right? And it's made by a company called Bio One. And you can go buy this at any store and treat your drains once a week, we tell you. And we tell you to do it at night, right? So that bacteria that you're putting in there that's safe, okay? I mean, you can drink it. I wouldn't recommend that, but you could drink it. It's that safe, right? But you're putting that into the pipe. It's going to eat the fats and the solids and multiply from eating that, and then it'll keep everything clean. Now, let's say that you have a constant issue of backing up, right? And maybe you have what they call a belly in the line, right? So, for whatever reason, in between, let's say a 10-foot section of pipe, or maybe it's 20 foot or whatever, but the ground underneath that pipe allowed like a slight indention at the bottom of the pipe. And so now we may get items that come through and kind of sit until it gets something bigger to kind of push it out. Usually that's where we're going to see backups, right? And we're going to run a drain camera down your lines to see and identify where that belly is, okay? We're going to recommend that you do a spot replacement on that, okay? Let's fix that. Let's get that pipe to where it's straight. Again, the pitch is correct so that we're moving our solids well down our sewer system. But let's just say your budget doesn't permit it. And today you just got to do a basic, a cleaning, right? So long term, that's not a good solution. But I know people that, look, until they can afford to get a spot repair, they're going to have us come out and clear their lines. And that's not something that the bio product is going to treat or get rid of. We always want to make the repair. Again, we want to fix the problem and not just band-aid a solution for us to come back out and clear your line again. I mean, that's not good for you. And quite honestly, we would rather fix the problem so that you don't have to call us back out and be inconvenienced by a backup.
No, that's good. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. This was
All
great.
right, man. Hey, have a good day, buddy.
You too.
All right, man. Thank you.